Kingston Coalition Against Poverty is a local activist group that advocates for people in poverty through direct action and resistance against government policies that harm the poor. So I'm here with Ian Clark of the Kingston Coalition Against Poverty. Ian, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start by talking about what the Kingston Coalition Against Poverty is and what it does in our community.
So we're primarily more sort of an activist advocacy style group. We try to advocate on behalf of those living in poverty, both in terms of sort of on the governmental policy side, but also in terms of kind of trying to change the conversation socially to kind of encourage more sort of normalizing of helping each other.
So let's talk about some of the things you do in the community to achieve your goals.
Well, at the moment, we've kind of been struggling a bit to figure out what we can do. But I mean, normally we do a lot of we'll put on a lot of free meals outside, or we'll do info sessions. We've had a couple town hall meetings in the past couple of years that I've really quite enjoyed doing, just kind of raising awareness of sort of local poverty-related issues.
So let's talk about COVID-19 and the pandemic and how it's both changed the way you operate, but also how it's affected people in poverty. It's made it worse, I would assume, for many people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like kind of the key to getting through this for a lot of people has been resources. And if you're someone without those, it's a lot harder, not just getting through your day-to-day life. I mean, I know especially, getting around if you're someone who relies on public transportation has suddenly gotten a lot harder because that's been, on the one hand, a lot cheaper now, but also a lot harder to actually get on. And it's also a lot riskier. A lot of things that have shut down, have kind of added costs to people's lives. And a lot of people have, particularly a lot of people who have been maybe working for minimum wage or kind of working a bit, near or below the poverty line are primarily some of the ones who have lost their jobs since this all started. We've seen a lot sort of happening with homelessness, which suddenly, homelessness is never exactly good for you, but it's suddenly become a lot more dangerous and a lot more deadly. Kind of the thing on everybody's mind is just how do you make it through isolation? And I think that's doubly challenging if you're talking about somebody who might not have as many things at home. Those without reliable internet connections couldn't do what we're doing right now. If people haven't had a lot of money for, say, like entertainment, then this is obviously going to be a lot harder on them than it is for somebody who might have, really nice TV setup, nice game system, large house. I can't imagine how much more challenging this would be living in, say, a bachelor apartment, especially if it's, some of the apartments for those living sort of on sort of the subsidized housing units in town. Very small units, not necessarily the best conditions. And I know a lot of people living in poverty, just the ability to go outside, the ability to see people is kind of something that they rely on quite a lot. And that's been taken away from them.
Can you paint me a picture of poverty in Kingston? People know it's out there, but just how much of it is there?
I think it can be deceptive how much of it there is, because a lot of the time it can be hard to find, particularly people kind of living on the margins. A lot of people couch surfing. There's been kind of an understated end, especially couch surfing has become a lot more challenging because you can't really move per se. And I know I'm mentioning homelessness a lot, but that's kind of been where our focus has been on the past little bit. That's certainly something that I think we've seen some positive improvements with over the past couple of years, but I think the numbers are quite a lot higher than most people realize. Certainly, at least in the hundreds. I have heard some people suggest it might be in the thousands. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me.
Talk about the Kingston Coalition Against Poverty. Who's involved in it, and how does the organization work?
So we're a relatively small group. I think at the moment we have 6 members who regularly attend our meetings, which now we've had to do the meetings online. But so I'm the president. My wife is the vice president. We operate primarily on a consensus-based model, so any decision that we make has to be passed via unanimous consent by the entire group. I've been a part of the group since 2012. Group has been around since 2006, originally started for a number of reasons, but in large part during the whole Block D thing.
Right now, you can't get out in the community as much. You're a watchdog for and advocate for the poor. What does that look like for you?
Trying to keep a bit of an eye on some of what's been going on with the situation pertaining to the new temporary shelter that's opened up. I think it's in the East End, sort of to be more conducive to social isolating, where everybody's kind of got their own room. We've been taking a look at that, and we've just kind of been trying to get people's feedback on kind of how it's going. People who are staying there, people who are working there, people who are interacting, and it seems to be going. I mean, certainly, I think it's a positive step that the city has done this because it's something that I think even 3 years ago would have been almost unfathomable. And I think for a lot of people it is working, but we have heard some accounts of people for whom it's not working. They're finding the conditions a bit too restrictive. They're finding it difficult to access, and I think we're seeing that kind of manifesting in the sort of tent city that's come up at Bell Park.
Can you talk about the city's municipal response?
I think that a lot of things have gone well, and I think the fact that they've been so willing to work with the tent city that's set up at Bell Park has been really positive. I think that the fact that I don't remember if it's the city or just sort of other municipal organizations have been liaising daily with the people there and kind of trying to make sure the conditions there are as positive as possible. I think that it's certainly something that I was pleasantly surprised by, but I think there's also still work to be done, because I think that certainly if we look at kind of how things are going with the shelter and how things are going with the tent city, I think what we're seeing is there's a need, I think, for maybe more diverse frameworks, because I mean, it's was an issue before COVID hit, and it's something that we've spoken about, quite publicly, kind of at length. That I feel there is a danger sometimes to there being only one service provider for things like shelters, which right now that's Kingston Home-Based Housing. Which, no disrespect, their framework is great for a lot of people, and a lot of people actually probably prefer the way that it's run, the new shelter in the East End. But I think that it would be helpful if there were a multitude of providers kind of with a bunch of different frameworks so that everybody kind of has, if a particular way that things are run doesn't work for them, they've got another place where things are run differently. And if that doesn't work, then they've got another place and they can kind of work their way through it that way.
Ian, tell me, why do you do this? Why is it important to you?
I kind of feel like I couldn't not, to some degree. I am not currently living in poverty, but I did spend a lot of my sort of early adulthood living in poverty, living in some kind of precarious situations. And I mean, more than that, I kind of guess I just see it as something that has to be done.
What's your vision for the coalition? What's the end goal?
Officially, our end goal is the absolute eradication of poverty globally. That's obviously a bit more than we're probably going to be able to accomplish as a 6-person group operating out of Kingston, Ontario. But I would say more for the short term. I think it's just to kind of shift the paradigm with our local government, and maybe a little bit to a lesser extent with our provincial government, to kind of being a bit more geared toward helping people living in poverty. Which, to City Council's credit, I think they actually have done kind of in leaps and bounds, this particular City Council versus previous ones.
Do you have a direct action initiative that you are most proud of?
I don't know if it would count as a direct action initiative per se, but the town hall meeting that we ran a year and a half ago, we actually wound up having 6 city councilors, which we found out is actually the most you can legally have. And I think I can't really prove anything, but I think I've definitely noticed a positive shift in city policy since then. The warming station that was opened up over this past winter, I was just absolutely elated to see that happening, and that's something that I don't think we would have seen with the last council or with any council previous in recent memory.
Are you looking for people to join the coalition and help out?
We absolutely are. As I mentioned, we are a 6-person group. When I first joined, we were about a 12-person group, and we actually shrunk to. For a while, it was actually the way I became president was because it actually was down to my wife and I at one point. So certainly a bit of a step in the right direction that we're up to 6 people, but we definitely could use more people. We could use as many people as possible.
Well, Ian Clark, thank you for talking to me today, and stay safe.
Thank you.